So today we're going to be replacing a set of leaf springs on MGB. So as with anything on suspension and underneath the car, you want to get in there, wire brush all the bolts, like the U-bolts for the rear and everything, and then put some penetrating oil on them. And the earlier you do that, the better chance you have of it coming apart. Now, before I put any power tools to this, I like to kind of see if they're gonna want to come loose with a wrench. Because if you just throw an impact on there, you can actually break these off if they're not wanting to come loose. It'll go. How tight it'll go. Now, in my case, I do have more U-bolts in stock, but if you're doing it at home and you don't have U-bolts, you need to be more careful. I like to put a little pressure on the spring, or, well, actually, yeah, put a little pressure on the spring here. The big reason I like to put a little pressure on this, raise this up a little, because then you can actually get the shock come down, regardless of whether you're using these kind of shocks or the original shocks. That gives you a chance to be able to swing that away. And then you can get in here and take all this apart. But I'm going to have to get some tools here. I have to tap on this a little bit with a hammer, maybe use it as a screwdriver to pry and get it apart. So these things, a little bit of rust in here. Doesn't like that. Just pop right off. It is a good idea to replace these. These can rot out. Now, if you got a car that tends to want to pull to the left and to the right under acceleration and deceleration, it could be that these need to be tightened up again because these are starting to deteriorate and it's no longer tight here. It's really noticeable on the midgets more with the short wheelbase. So then, once we get this loose, we move back here to get these loose, which is going to be 9/16 as well. Now, it's a lot easier here because I don't have an exhaust system in my way. Without the exhaust system, it's a little bit tighter to work. And just pop right off. Sometimes those don't pop off quite so easily, but then you just kind of pry that out. Let it drop. And it is a good idea to at least look at the bushings, a minimum. See what kind of condition they're in. See if they actually need replaced or not, or you can go ahead and replace them as par for the course And you can do urethane, or you can do the original rubber. All right, now dealing with this is a whole different ball game. Of course, it's a 7/16 bolt, which means it's got different size head than it does nut. What I find is rarely does the bolt actually come out of here, unless the springs have been off the car at some point in the past. If it's all original, don't count on it coming out. They'll almost always be frozen in here. And wow, believe it or not, this one's coming out. I'm really surprised by that. Almost always frozen in that bushing, and they look like this. And then what you gotta do is you gotta get in here and cut through the bolt head on both sides, through the bolt, and you wanna be very careful when you're cutting in there that you don't cut into the brackets, that you cut through the rubber and the bushing and go through the sleeve instead. So here are the springs we're putting in them. They're what I would like to call almost new. They were in a car for a few months and then taken out because a customer of mine had wanted to try GT springs in a Roadster, ended up not liking them, and then brought it to me and paid me to take the GT springs out and put Roadster springs in. And then he left these springs with me. So I'm donating these to the cause for this car here, which is for that teenager. But I had stolen the bolt out of the here, holding the stack together, out of the one from my car, because I had one broken on mine. So I'm gonna have to steal the bolt out of the center of one of those other springs to put in that. So now when putting this together, of course the bolt needs to go through from this way. It won't actually go through that way, but you should put a little bit of grease on the bolt, the shank of the bolt here, before you put it in. Because then in the future, it will come apart a whole lot easier. That helps prevent that from getting stuck. I'm not too worried about tightening that just yet, because we're going to work on everything else first. So in this case, I just went ahead and moved the bushings over from the other spring. This is a high school kid's car. We're just doing this on a budget. And just like the front bolt, it's a good idea to put a little bit of grease on these. Helps everything to slide together a whole lot easier. Find that since there's no compression on the spring, it'll actually feel too short. But that is normal. And then just put the plate back on it and the lock washers and nuts. And probably one of the trickiest parts of doing this is that you actually have to compress the spring up. So you need to jack it up somewhere. In my case, since I got this transmission jacket on my lift, it works pretty nice. You want to press the spring up, and then get that to actually seat there. And you see where that tries to slide because you're on that arc. And this gets twice as difficult if you're putting all new rubber spring pads and stuff in there, because they just don't compress. And if you're playing with, that's why. If you're playing with all new U-bolts and stuff, then the U-bolts want to slide around and push up, and it can be quite an experience to get everything to sit just like you want it to. Of course, I need to get this thing twist. Putting pressure on the leaf spring in the wrong direction here. I have to reset. Because it slips. Since it slipped like that, I can't actually get it to sit on there. You need to be as close to the axle as you can with your jack, so it doesn't make the spring kind of twist and tilt without actually it getting in your way. Of course, it's always a lot easier to talk about doing this part than it is to actually do it. If it weren't for the fact that I was reusing the spring pad here, I put the spring pad up there first and then guide the plate up on there. But that's a little hard to do. Reusing the pad. Now it's just getting all the bolts to actually line up properly in here. That can be the hardest part. Because the angle of pushing up on the spring is changing this slightly, so it's not quite lining everything up exactly, making it a little more difficult. This bolt the U-bolt's trying to go this way in relation to this being back here, because the way the axle's sitting here. It's just a matter of getting the U-bolt to come all the way down in. And sometimes just running a nut up there can just pull everything down real good too. Or if you want to not put a nylock on there, just a regular nut for that. So you and just one little trick you can use here if you're having trouble with it like I am. Just draw them up. Get the top pad pulled back down and the U-bolts pulled through. Everything's sitting like you need it. Then you can pull the shock back in, which I'm going to have to get this jacked up. Get that jacked up far enough to actually get that to go on. Now here, you always want to use brand new nylocks on here. Never reuse them because they can come loose. Pull up all the nuts evenly. And what I like to do is look at how much thread is sticking out past each one of them and draw them all where I'm pretty certain we're secure enough, which I think there's a torque setting in the manual. And that they're not, if all nice and even all the way across, and you got even pressure. That's basically putting one spring in, and of course we've got to tighten the nut up here on the front, and that's one spring installed, and we just have to do the same thing on the other side. So like I said earlier, these bolts rarely come out. This one's not budging at all, and you can actually see it. My spring is not even moving. Now you can go at this thing with a Sawzall, but like I can't really get in there with a Sawzall with this in my way because you have to get in it from this angle here. So my weapon of choice in this situation is 4.5 inch grinder with a cutoff disc in there. And like I said, you got to get in and make sure you cut into the bushing here and not get into the bracket at all, which gets a little messy with this because it'll stink up the place quite a bit. We got the one side broke loose. Now I just got to get my handle switched around so I can get at it from the other side. Or maybe not, actually. And you kind of got to be careful when you're doing this from the other side with one of these, because the direction of rotation of this thing, you got to account for that. And I'm not going the optimum direction in this case. And of course, I'm really close to the, well, do it this way, yeah.
car's moving.
In this case here, if I turn around the other way, I'm shooting against the fuel pump. You don't really want to do that. So now it's a matter of getting it to come loose. I may not be cut into it quite far enough. On this side here, I'm not cut into it. Now it doesn't matter how much you cut into the spring or the bushing, because who cares about that? You're not reusing it. And then it's just a matter of knocking this loose and proceeding just as we were before. So this is still even stuck in there. So I might have to get in there and cut a little bit more, get it closer to get that part of the bushing off there. But that's how I deal with this being stuck. And I always keep these bolts in stock.